much for taking the time to spend with us in this 1 hour we have together, where I will be discussing with you the impact of COVID-19 on entrepreneurship. Obviously, two key words here. One of them I think we just can't hear any more of, this COVID-19. We're all wishing it just goes away and disappears. But we're going to say something about how people are coping and what it's done. And of course, the issue of entrepreneurship. And we'll sort of explain why we feel that entrepreneurs have been affected, both positively and obviously negatively, by this unfortunate situation that we are in. So the plan here is, obviously, because there are quite a number of you joining this session, is that your microphones are obviously going to be muted during the session. You know, there is the chat function. If you feel there is a question you would like to ask, kindly write it out on the chat. And when I finish my presentation, we'll kind of have a look at the chat, and I'll go through it. And hopefully, if there's enough time, we'll see how much we can answer of all that is being said to us. Okay, so let's start the presentation. Let's start looking at what we have in this. Let's see why the slides are not moving down. Let's give me a chance. Let's see why the slides are not progressing. All right. Oh, okay. I have no idea what this line is here. Wendy, do you have any idea how that came there?
No, sorry, but it's something that also happened in one of our previous Zoom meetings. So could be that someone, that's kind of strange indeed. No, sorry.
Okay, sorry about that. You will be getting a copy of these slides if you are interested to have them, but the copy you'll get is without that red line across the screen if you're seeing it the way I am. Okay, so COVID-19 is a crisis, let's put it that way. And a crisis is pretty much defined as something that hits a big portion of the population, very often without warning, causing, of course, negative situations around us. But if we look at history, if we look at the past and see what has happened over some time, what are some of the big events that have happened, some of the big crises that have happened, and what was their ultimate impact? Obviously, people who were living through these experiences probably had quite a tough and terrible time. But of course, history sees things in a macro situation. So if we really go back to the 1300s, like that was the time when there was what was known as the Black Death. But this helped in actually developing modern employment contracts. It was actually the beginning of a really big change in the way people are employed in organizations, kind of thing. We see the economic recession of 1453. That is the time when there was a 100-year war between England and France, but it drove a major innovation in the way agriculture was being run, and big productivity improvements were seen in agriculture. And one might sort of say, what's the connection here? But ultimately, that is the link that it had. In 1914, where we had the World War I, that actually gave rise to the League of Nations, which ultimately became the United Nations, started seeing the advent of women's rights, and in a way, the beginning of the end. It took some time, but the beginning of the end of colonialism in the world. Many more events took place since then. Obviously, World War II. World War II resulted in a very huge expanding middle class, big improvements in transportation, motorways, train systems, the development of the United Nations from the League of Nations, and believe it or not, GPS was also a result of probably technical developments that had to be done during the war. More recently, 9/11, we've seen a dramatic change in the whole concept, for example, of aviation, security, things we had to kind of get used to in the way we pass through security, no liquids, many places you're taking off your shoes, a big hassle, true. But at the same time, maybe just a bigger, better feeling of security as we pass through airports. SARS in 2002 gave, if nothing else, an enormous growth opportunity for Alibaba, the e-commerce company of Alibaba. That's when, of course, in Asia, people started realizing how easier it was to purchase things online. And that company was kind of positioned at the right moment to make all this happen. Even more recently, many of us, of course, remember very clearly the financial crisis of 2008. What did that do? That really boosted up the popularity of companies like Airbnb, Uber. Why? Because there was much lower saving, much lower income for the vast majority of people, and therefore this idea of sharing assets at a much cheaper price started gaining ground. And these organizations obviously therefore exploded with this new development, which was totally in their favor. Now, what happened to business in COVID-19 times? Definitely we have seen a decline in buyer demand, especially for non-essential goods. I don't think for the last 3 months people were thinking about the next business suit they want to buy, possibly the next car they want, or some luxury bag you might want. You had nowhere to go anyway. And it possibly was a time where we wanted to just hold on to the money we have just to be sure everything's going to be okay. I lecture supply chain management, and last week I was just lecturing supply chain management to students in our Kuwait program. And it was very interesting to hear the students all discussing the big problems a number of their companies experienced in supply chains, in the way goods, products, raw materials could not reach the respective organizations, creating hardships even on the population and for businesses because they couldn't obtain the goods they needed to keep on working. We've seen a bigger increase in transactional costs with all the health regulations, with all the testing issues that were going on. Costs have risen in this respect, and who of us have not experienced over the last few months a whole barrage of new government regulations in terms of what we can, what we can't do, how we can do it, how we shouldn't do it, what we have to wear, what we can't wear, how many people in a shop, which shops can or can't open. The list is quite long in that respect. So these are things that we have been living in. Now, I'm saying March 2020, but I want you to reflect, as in when exactly did your world change? If I have to speak for myself, I would say round about 15th March was the time that it was obvious that something big is happening. The world is going to change. In Malta, we discovered the first case of COVID-19. And in a very short period of time, government had already started imposing a number of regulations. Shops closing, schools closing, everybody working from home basically, airports closed. Now Malta depends heavily on the tourism industry. And obviously, a total collapse in that particular sector. On the other hand, healthcare was working in overdrive, we said. And unfortunately, yes, people got sick and people have died as well. So a very big uncertainty. And sometimes it takes a bit of internalization to really tell yourself, hey, what's really happening here? Am I really experiencing this? Where is it going? For how long? What's going to change? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my work? We were in uncharted waters, weren't we? And in some way, we still are, although with a little bit more clarity. I would say there is light. We are seeing some light at the end of this tunnel, but we definitely felt powerless. Nobody really knew what to do. Businesses were scrambling to find ways to work, to find ways to survive. But of course, this also caused a lot of stress. People were having mental issues in that respect. Stress was really building. And, we could say, yeah, it was hard to breathe in that respect because a lot of uncertainty was all around us. So it is good to look back and say, how was I feeling at that time, February, March? And when I think about it, I came back from overseas in Malta on the 25th of February. At that time, they were on that day still installing or just about to install thermal cameras at the airport. So everything really happened very, very fast after that event. How are things now? Have things changed for you in the country you are living? Have they gotten any better? Or have they stayed the same? Or have they unfortunately actually gotten worse? But of course, the world is made up of two extremes, isn't it? There were organizations that suddenly found that this COVID-19 gave their business a tremendous boost. Online shopping, food delivery, video games, video conferencing, anything that had to do with health. All these businesses, all these industries were suddenly booming, just couldn't cope with the business they were generating. On the other hand, as we said, if you were in the hospitality business, hotels, tourism, restaurants, unfortunately, any kind of retail, entertainment, sports, you had a tough time. You probably were not even allowed to operate, even if you wanted to. So here we see the extremes of who was doing well and unfortunately who was really caught up in a pretty big mess over here. So how do we react in times of crisis? And what is a personal reaction to danger? So you could be living in a war zone, for example. There could have been a terrorist attack. There could be, of course, this pandemic that we are seeing right now. And all these things have a very strong impact on us, even as individuals. Suddenly, social isolation was created, wasn't it? We were told, stay home, don't go out. So suddenly you're alone. Nobody wants to come near you. Nobody wants to speak to you. You are literally living at home alone. As I said earlier on, mental health difficulties, stress. So it's hard to cope. It's hard to deal with complexity. It's hard to take the difficult decisions in that respect. People were absenteeising themselves from work. People were not going to work, even if they were asked to go to work. Schools were closed, so people had challenges to cope with children at home. So this was a major disruption in everybody's life. Now, as people, and this is where personality comes in as well, we can experience both positive and negative emotions. But of course, the kind of emotions we tend to experience are going to say something about our coping mechanisms in times like this. If we are the kind of people with positive emotions where gratitude, love, interest are pretty high and expressed in the way we look at the world, there's a high probability that they are going to help us cope in these difficult times. While on the other hand, if we are very anxious, we are very fearful, tend to get angry really with the situation and feel sad and unhappy, this is going to actually make us feel very, very difficult to cope with the reality we are facing, and might actually end up feeling completely helpless to do anything about it. But now let's get entrepreneurs into the story. Now, of course, I don't know how many of you with us today are entrepreneurs, but it's definitely worth a bit of a self-reflection. Now, entrepreneurs had it tough as well. At the end of the day, in normal circumstances, entrepreneurs are always the ones who are always struggling for funding. They're always finding it difficult to raise money, but also they are the ones who are most emotionally tied to their business. And yet, this is their business. This is something big that is happening right now, and they are actually feeling alone. Who's going to help the entrepreneur? You know, you are the last man standing, we say. There's no one else to turn to. If you were the employee, maybe you turn to your boss for support in these times. But if you are the entrepreneur, you are the last person. Overall, we would say maybe little government support. And obviously, because you are an international audience, you have to, of course, see what support did your governments offer to anybody who was an entrepreneur. What I can say, at least back home, well, it was very industry related. Some specific industries were given help, especially if you were in the tourism industry, hospitality industry. Other industries, despite not being able to function, were literally left alone and, left short with any support that they might have. But however, my last bullet point, I think, is now the crux of it all, isn't it? That despite all this situation that we are facing over here, this is the moment that we would say entrepreneurs are most prepared for, because they are resourceful people. Entrepreneurs have become entrepreneurs because of this self-direction, because they are survivors in difficult times. So really, if we really think about it and say who had the highest probability of succeeding in this COVID-19 situation. So despite the lack of support, the entrepreneur should have the internal capability to actually be the winner in this respect. Now, any crisis at a macroeconomic level, because this is not a crisis at home, this is not only a national crisis, this was an international crisis. Now, this leads to two things. This leads to what we call a negative shift in perceived environmental uncertainty. Therefore, we perceive the external environment as being more risky, more uncertain, and there's an impact on opportunity confidence. This could decrease. We might start doubting any idea we might have of what to do even more. Now, a combination of these two factors, in terms of a mindset, how we could be thinking, really has four possible responses. One of them being disengagement. You just decrease your opportunity confidence. And therefore, you might just sort of say, I'm not going to do something about this. I'm not going to launch anything different. It's not going to work now. And you just not do anything about it. Option two is like if you were going to do something now, you might just say, let me wait a bit. Let me wait another month. Let me wait another 2 months. Let me see what's going to happen. Because it makes the choice difficult in terms of what you want to do. Imagine you were planning to invest some more money in your business. You might take a decision to delay. Sometimes we compensate more. So if we were even thinking of launching some new business, and we were thinking of, who knows, maybe with 20,000 euros, we were going to launch this business. Today, you want to overcompensate. So that would mean, no, I better get 30. I better get more. I better have more resources because of the situation. Or else option four, we literally adapt our idea to fit the circumstances. So we're going to kind of tear it apart, rebuild it, and just hope it's going to work to fit the situation that we would be in. Now, what has been found out, and interestingly enough, I've even come across a study done on entrepreneurs in a war zone like Afghanistan, for example. And it's really incredible to see how people still have that inner drive to become an entrepreneur, despite these challenging conditions they find themselves in. So we can still grow from adverse situations, but we need resilience. And we need to believe in our entrepreneurial abilities. So if we have the skills or the characteristics of resilience and self-efficacy, we are in the right direction to be able to grow even in a time that is considered very, very difficult and challenging. So we need this sense of resilience. Life must go on. We have to keep going. We have to fight it. Obviously, the less resilient we are as individuals, the more discouraged we are, the more we're going to spend time moaning and groaning and really doing nothing about it. Self-efficacy is about believing that we have what it takes to succeed. If we don't even believe in ourselves, obviously we're going to have a major challenge to do anything about it. But these are characteristics that you will tend to find very strong in entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur has the resilience, has that self-efficacy, and in a way are pretty well suited to find themselves in adverse environments, because with these characteristics, they are the ones that can really lead the way out of it. There are other two important things that we have to say about an entrepreneur's life. And they are two important characteristics as well that really make people become entrepreneurs. That's why we call them intoxicating promises of entrepreneurship. The risk. Will I do well? Will my business succeed? What's the probability of failure? So there's always going to be high risk, but of course, the freedom to act. And an entrepreneur has to have both. You have to feel that you want that freedom to act, and you need to embrace risk. You will never be an entrepreneur if risk is something that you are afraid of. So you have to be able to embrace it. And that's why an entrepreneur chooses this life. They know something bad can happen, something bad will happen. Maybe I'll run out of money. Maybe I won't get any customers. Maybe my business will fail. They know they're going to face unpredictable income, which can have, of course, a big impact on their personality, their ego, their family. They know if they get sick, nobody's going to pay them. They know there's no pension plan from any company, and yet they did what they did. So entrepreneurs going in for risk is not a new thing. So this is a situation that an entrepreneur is really ready for. But of course, that freedom to act is everything now. This is why people became entrepreneurs. They want to pursue the ideas they have. They had an idea, they want to turn it into a job, they want to turn it into a business, they chase opportunities, and they are in control of their life. There's a lot of internal locus of control here, rather than feeling that the elements around them are going to dictate what opportunities they have in life. So this is the time for an entrepreneur to act on that freedom. So they are ready for the risk. They have the freedom to act. They are not waiting for anyone. So really, this is an ideal scenario, an ideal situation for entrepreneurs to get going. This is where they need to cash in, we say. So what do they have to do? Entrepreneurs now need to try new things. This is, yes, the time to experiment, to create, to pivot, to reposition maybe your business, to shift, we say. No excuses, no permission needed. They're not asking their boss for permission. They're not going to stay grumbling about whether the government gave them support or not. They don't moan, they don't sulk. They're not at home crying, they're acting. An entrepreneur is out there finding a way to move forward, despite the challenges that they face. So we're not saying this is not providing any challenges for entrepreneurs. We're not saying that life is simple for an entrepreneur. All I am saying is that it is positioning them just right to be able to do the right thing. Entrepreneurs, therefore, are fighters. They want the challenge. They are the optimistic and resilient people we just said that they are. But also, very important, they are capable of spotting the opportunities. Where the normal average person is seeing gloom and doom, they are seeing opportunities, maybe even for a new business, rather than how they can just adjust the present business they are in. If their industry was hit hard, if they were in businesses that were hit hard, they know this is the time for innovation. This is the time to bring in digital disruption into their business model, if of course they did not have it. They are going to go all out to make sure that their business can still succeed. But of course, they have to be fast and they need to respond. This is going to be a very dynamic situation. And that's the nice thing about entrepreneurship. Decisions can be made relatively quickly. So there is hope that entrepreneurs are going to be the ones to see us through this very difficult period, or at least we hope they will be the ones to bounce back pretty fast, despite the hit that they could be getting in this particular situation. It's not easy, because doing a little bit of research on funding at the moment, you would say a lot of global funding in all parts of the world, especially where it comes to startup funding, has been hard hit. A lot of businesses, therefore, are finding it very, very difficult to find seed money at this point in time. So anywhere you are, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in the US, whether it's in Asia, coming across seed money is going to be very, very difficult in that respect. So unfortunately, this is one of the big challenges that we see happening from a funding point of view. And here are even more examples, whether it's US venture capital, whether it's European capital. Things are going bad in this respect. The only positive thing that we could say is really happening here is that tech accelerators, and when we talk about an accelerator, this is a digital platform that obviously helps startups to find investors. Obviously, these are coming in for equity in that respect. So an accelerator is giving startups the funding they need, but also provides an element of services too in that respect. So it could be office space, mentorship, and sometimes supply chain support as well. Very time sensitive, so there's a lot of pressure if you go to any digital accelerator. But the point is, they are out to support. And here are some examples of some digital accelerators that are helping out. There's this Forbes 8, which is a digital video network, again, focused on entrepreneurship. And guess where it is? It's in Nigeria. So we don't only need to think that things are happening in the US or in Europe. There is support in these types of accelerators all over the world. The other example is coming from India, Riser's Accelerator. This is linked with the Indraprastha Institute of Technology in Delhi. And again, funding for tech startups is very, very high and good there. Canada, another example where we see accelerators helping there. Of course, another example is coming from the US, United Global Alliance here. Again, looking at supporting organizations doing pandemic response for innovation and scientific studies in that respect. So there's a lot happening in the technology area. And in fact, this is the time to really launch a tech startup, for that matter. This is the time where if you have not gone digital yet, then needless to say, this is the time I would say most organizations are seriously considering anything that has to do with digitization for their business. Now, what have entrepreneurs done in these 3 months, and especially related to the pandemic, for that matter? Here we have a case. This is a Northern Ireland thermoforming entrepreneur. What did this entrepreneur do? Well, he developed a thermoform plastic box, definitely to help clinical staff and patients in a, somebody's got microphones on. Wendy, I don't know if you can find out, if you can switch that off.
Yes, I already muted.
Thank you, thank you. So this is known as the head box. You know, nobody asked this person to invent it. This person saw an opportunity, saw the challenges that possibly health practitioners were having in hospitals, and came up with an idea to support in that respect. So here we are, seeing entrepreneurship in action. Ideas come from all over the world. Japan, we've got another example of a biotech startup. And again, developing inhalable treatment for patients. So anybody that was in kind of the biotech, pharmaceutical, tech, medical industry, this was an opportunity to say, let's go out there, let's really see how we can support local communities and sometimes even on a global scale to try and help alleviate a lot of problems and pain that people are having with this COVID-19. Another biotech startup, Plo, that we have over here coming from Virginia, awarded an enormous contract from the government, but again, it's working in relation to developing pharmaceutical ingredients, for that matter. And again, to help the treatment of patients suffering from this disease. So it is amazing the number of private organizations that have taken on the initiatives to support governments, for that matter, at any level, to really work hard to reduce the impact of this COVID-19. An American organization here, Aetion, and this is another health tech startup linked with the Harvard Medical School. Again, it's analyzing data here, the use of diagnostics and medications in the pandemics. Data is, of course, very important part of the new tech way forward, especially anyone thinking of using anything related to artificial intelligence. We know that data is the food that all these machines ultimately need. Many more examples that I'm going to share with you. This is Nova Biotics, again, looking at antimicrobial drugs, again, working in very, very rapidly to try and create experimental drugs, working closely with the NHS in the UK, another UK organization from Oxford, Nanopore, again, working with the public health laboratories and researchers, again, seeing how to support COVID-19 pandemics in that respect. Closer to home, as in smaller initiatives that we have seen entrepreneurs take in this difficult time. Here we've got this organization called Ground Control. What have they done? They created a tranquility garden at one of the NHS hospitals, at NHS Nightingale in London, giving people space where to get fresh air. So you get initiatives coming out of entrepreneurs, just people wanting to do something to help. There's this other organization, Box, working with the World Health Organization. And what is it doing? Training call center staff so that they can really provide the right information to customers, to people who actually call in. Here's another example from Toronto. This person, Fred, owns Fix, which is a bike cafe. What did he do? Obviously, he started off with a takeout window because his, obviously, cafe was probably closed, but of course then started actually carrying out deliveries. He still carried on repairing bikes with an outdoor drop-off point, changed probably payment systems, sanitized equipment now. Obviously had to take into account all the new health measures that were required. And here we even had another case where we've got this guy, Bill Levy, who had developed this friendly environmental water company, bottle company, NAECO, and he started creating this Give Masks. He created this non-profit organization donating personal protective equipment to all workers. So we see people instantly taking initiatives to do something over here. More cases we have here under the doormat. This woman set up Homes for NHS, a website that puts health staff in touch with landlords. So if they couldn't go home, they could easily find somewhere to stay. Again, we saw the entrepreneurs that developed the sports nutrition brand Grenade, just giving out their bottles, their sports drink to staff as well. So we see entrepreneurs out there taking action. But what is important is the question that I put at the top here. Do they plan to get rich? And this is an interesting question. Why are they doing this? Because you might doubt with some of the examples I gave you what's in it for them. Well, the reality is none of them really plan to get rich just because you're giving out your free bottles of Grenade to people. Some of them might even be losing money. But what is important here is to see that they feel compelled to act. And I'll take you back to what we said about that freedom to act. This is what it's all about. Entrepreneurs cannot just sit back. They were not powerless for too long. That might have been for a short while. But soon that panic, that fear turned around. And it turned into power. And they used their freedom. And they used their risk-taking capability. And moved ahead. And have no doubt, they will be using the same techniques to make sure that their organizations get out on top. I'm in Malta. What have I observed over these few months? In the top left, you see an online digital communication award. This is a company that has traditionally created face-to-face big parties to create award ceremonies, immediately shifting to online. A very close friend of mine runs a ballet school. Couldn't do any teaching at the ballet class anymore, but they switched online. And she was actually running classes online and watching her students dance at home. Suddenly, delivery services took over, whether it was Wolt, Bolt. Everywhere you look, people either dressed in blue or green delivering food or packages to your house. E-Cabs, a very well-known taxi company, was actually supporting government, giving out packages, parcels, food to old people, vulnerable people that couldn't move around. Heritage Malta was offering virtual tours of museums. In the top right, you see a 3D view of a house. This is what all real estate companies were doing. Suddenly they were promoting all the digital technology they could to take you through a virtual world once people were not going out to actually see property. And below, I've got the Rotary La Valette, because I am a member of Rotary. Well, we switched to online digital meetings using Zoom as a platform. The positive thing about that was that we managed to bring a lovely array of international speakers, where normally when we meet face-to-face, unless you were in Malta, you couldn't quite come and give us a talk. But today we've had people from South Africa, from Canada, from New Zealand, from Australia, giving us talks. So it's really, really amazing what a lot of good and what a lot of change has come out of these situations. But where are the growth areas? Where could entrepreneurs be looking? Obviously, we need to think a little bit local. Not all airports are open. It's not going to be that easy to travel. There's still a lot of unknowns about how we can get around. So you might want to think a little bit local at this stage. 3D printing has probably exploded right now with problems in supply chains. Artificial intelligence, biology, this is a field day, isn't it? Education, here we are. As MSM, we had to suddenly immerse ourselves in all forms of digital platforms to ensure that we maintain our educational standards with all our students around the world. Home-based issues. Look around the home, see what you can do for people in their homes to make their lives easier. A lot of impact on climate change initiatives. We've seen in just a few months what a change there has been in the climate. Of course, everybody is converting to remote working. So what are the opportunities for businesses there? As we said, e-commerce, this is your time, isn't it? This is your field day. This is the time to obviously explode. Anyone doing hygiene products, this is it. Anything to do with sanitization, this is your time. Health, wellness products, this is it. And of course, even from a consulting point of view, business disaster planning is definitely something many companies are going to take seriously if till today they did not take that seriously. So look around. Where are your opportunities in which you can, of course, develop? So what do we take away from a session like this? So here, very quickly, we can say entrepreneurship is and will always be the freedom to act when you need to and the risks that come with it. The two key words we spoke about earlier on, freedom and risk, which clearly define what an entrepreneur is all about. And if you believe in your abilities, if you have that self-efficacy and you are tough, you are resilient to persevere, you will transform. You will definitely feel that inspiration and motivation, not only for yourself, but others around you, because for all we know, as an entrepreneur, you are employing people. So this is your opportunity to really inspire people and make your business grow despite the challenges and the hard times that business in general is facing out there. And if you can do some good for your community, a bit of CSR at the moment, I think, would be a very welcome thing for all organizations to embrace, for that matter. So, what's the situation in the globe right now? Obviously, you have to see the situation in your particular country. All I can say for my country in Malta, from the 1st July, officially life goes back to normal. No more restrictions. Airport is open to some selected destinations, but no social distancing, no face masks, no nothing. We're going to see how life can move in that direction. Obviously, not all countries in the world are at the same stage, but there is containment in most parts. So we're going to see what this COVID-19's impact is going to be, not only for the short term, but medium to long term. This is the time for entrepreneurs to jump on the opportunities and develop new businesses. But not just new businesses, new business models will come out. This is the time, we say, that the new king of the world will be the Amazon of dematerialization, meaning the tech world in that respect. And have no doubt, it is entrepreneurs that are going to lead the way in this respect. That brings me to the end of the presentation I had for you. I purposely finished a little bit earlier. Hopefully, I'll be able to have a look at some of the comments you might have put up. What do we have here? COVID-19 has been a monumental disaster for all the nations on the planet. Definitely has. In Africa, the economic effect of the pandemic is substantially more serious compared to other parts of the world due to endemic poverty. that has existed in many economies on the continent long before the coronavirus. The fallout has been mass unemployment, consumers and companies' ability to spend has been massively decimated. We empathize with your comment, Olusein. Yes, we do realize that, needless to say, I mean, when we see developed countries like Italy struggling to cope, I can only imagine how tough it is in your part of the world. Having said that, it still could be an opportunity for people to be entrepreneurial in no matter how small a way that might be. There is always a need for something to be done to help, to support, despite the difficulties that you are all facing, those of you, of course, coming from Africa, especially if things are getting worse for you. I hope you do find the support from, obviously, the richer countries of the world that can help you get out of this. But having said that, don't just depend on handouts. You know, you have to get your act together again. And this is the time for entrepreneurs to wake up and get going. This is the time that they can do something about it. Not saying it is easy. It's definitely very, very challenging, but it is definitely a moment to do something. Can we? Okay. There is Khalifa Fund in the UAE, supports the entrepreneurs to establish their own businesses. Can you check the below link to know more? So the question might be, does the Khalifa Fund support maybe entrepreneurs in Africa too? Or is it only for the Middle East? But that's something, thank you very much for sharing that link with us, that, you know, some of you might wish to copy that link and try it out, see if it can lead to any positive outcomes. So thank you very much for sharing that. Fear not, the modern senior public officer who cannot still type his or her own documents. No, there is nothing you can do to stop an idea whose time has come. All you need to do now is on the times, invest in yourself, improve yourself, and be more digitally literate. Yes, this is the time to be digitally literate. This is what's going to distinguish the haves and have-nots in the world. There was a time it's whether you could write your name or whether you couldn't. But now, even if you can write your name, if you are not going to be digitally literate, you're going to be left behind big time now. Huh? It's not that technology was invented today. We've been living in a tech world for quite a while. But I think the impact, the explosion we are going to see in how technology is going to impact every single industry, every single type of business that where before they were kind of taking it easy, no rush. This is it now. You're either going to run, you're either going to do something about it, or you're really going to be left behind. In COVID conditions, your opinion, what business ideas are appropriate and have good opportunities? I did give quite a list in one of the slides. Now, of course, those ideas are, of course, very generic. Having said that, needless to say, if you're coming from 30 different countries, there are 30 different environments that we are facing here. So you really need to contextualize what an opportunity is in your part of the world and whether you can or whether you cannot act on it. So it's very difficult to give you more than the list that I did give you. However, what is important first is to have the will to look for those opportunities. I think if you already have that will, you are already showing and displaying entrepreneurial characteristics. If all you're going to do is sit back and wait for your government to help you out of this mess, you might just be left behind. So don't wait for any government to get you out of this mess. You have to take control of whatever situation you or your business is in. Now, if government help is there, embrace it. Obviously, welcome it. We're not going to say no, are we? Okay? But it's not easy. I work as a management consultant in Malta. There was absolutely no support for anyone in my position. In March, I lost my best local client because they were going through cost-cutting measures. And, you know, external people were the first people that they removed. But having said that, you know, opportunities do develop. Before I knew it, the tourism industry, the hardest hit industry in Malta, required my services, believe it or not. And I'm doing a lot of work in the tourism industry locally, even before hotels have opened. So sometimes opportunities do come your way. Of course, you have to spot them and you have to embrace them. And yes, I've done a lot of reading, a lot of learning about the hospitality industry, because I'm doing some lecturing even to people in the hospitality industry. So yeah, you have to embrace what comes your way in that respect. Just to add on, has been an opportunity for us, you, to explore other alternatives. Of course, we are not seated doing nothing. Oh, if you're young, I would hope you are not sitting down doing nothing. Okay, this is your time to really do something. Huh? Shape your future. Eh? Don't let this pandemic shape your future. Some youths have conducted urban planting and farming to reduce expenses, or buying food, which is quite expensive these days, making, yes, good. My son planted vegetables in the garden, you know, at my house, at my mother's house, you know, and suddenly we've got over, I don't know, about 100 tomatoes. We don't know what we're going to do with them any moment, you know. So yes, go ahead, do things, no matter how small. No matter how small. If 1,000, if 1,000,000 people do each one a small thing, that is an impact in your economy. Okay, never forget as well the impact of one. Okay, today with technology, one person has a lot of impact in an economy. Embrace that and do something about it. Contributing to humanity growth, yes. Let's have that social dimension as well. Personal financial management, very important to consider these days, definitely. I'm in the US and my business is growing in this area. Excellent to hear that. Zoom has been very helpful in helping me. There you go. Well done. I'm very happy for you, Brenda. So keep it up. If your business is doing well, let's hope your business can also help others grow. So I don't know whether you work alone, whether you have employees with you. So if you can support the team around you and helping them cope through this pandemic, then you are really contributing something special to society and to the world. So, you know, well done in that respect. Business consulting services, business marketing, consulting will be on the increase post-COVID. Consulting services, definitely post-COVID, unless it's something very urgent, people might still hold on to their money. Always remember, the first things companies will cut in crisis situations are training, research and development, and advertising. Those are the first three things that tend to go. Why? Because in the short run, you can survive. Long run, of course, they will suffer. If they're not going to train their staff, they're going to have a hard time. But short run, for 3 months, 4 months, of course we can survive if we didn't do any training. Of course we'll survive without our consultants. Will they survive long term? That is something else. But yes, we will see consulting definitely getting back in. Millions of people will be starting their own businesses, either out of necessity or out of new opportunities. I was once asked to do an entrepreneurship course in Malta to 50 unemployed people. I nearly refused it because I was sure I'm going to have 50 lazy people who are unemployed because they want to do absolutely nothing in life. It was completely the opposite. These were either made redundant or they were women coming back into the workforce. They were extremely motivated to start their business. They had nothing to lose. They were ready to take a risk. It was a thrill. It was a wonderful experience. I was panicking, thinking I was about to turn that down. But these were highly engaged people. And yes, people who might have found themselves without a job. If I were teaching you entrepreneurship, I would be telling you that is a moment where an entrepreneurial decision could be made. Because you have nothing to lose now. You don't have a good pay, you don't have a good position at risk, you've got nothing. Go for it. If that's one of you, go for it. If you have an idea, if you see an opportunity, go for it. So really, really do that. So yeah, it could mean a spike in demand for marketing and business consulting. Let's hope so, because that could give some more work to me too. So I'll hope that your prediction is definitely going to work out in all parts of the world. Big companies and corporations will reduce very soon the number of their employees. Well, some already have. Some big companies will be in the situation of closing their business. Well, some might not. There will be more new entrepreneurs in the upcoming period, definitely. Do you think we will go to a kind of inflation of entrepreneurs, or will we see a switch from multinational corporations to smaller local startups? Well, if we see the trend even in what young people do, if you look at the concept of the gig economy, where you see a trend in young people not even wanting a full-time job anymore, but would rather have 3 or 4 part-time jobs, doing business online, doing some work from home, and then maybe doing a bit of taxi service with, you know, Uber or whatever, or Bolt or whoever, some 3 hours a day in the evening, and then delivering something to someone else. A lot of people want this, and it's going to actually, this situation is going to enhance that mentality, because people who have lost jobs are going to lose confidence in the employed way of life and will be trying to find ways to survive on their own. So we could be seeing, at the end, it's still a bit early to predict with certainty, but that's a good point. We could be seeing a tremendous increase in what we call local startups, definitely. Isn't this the time for social entrepreneurship? Definitely. And a lot of the examples I gave have social entrepreneurial implications. When we talk of social entrepreneurship, it does not necessarily mean you do it without making money. You can still make profit in social entrepreneurship. The important thing is that the ultimate goal has a social dimension. It is not just commercial profit making. You are doing good for society. So yes, I totally subscribe with your comment. It is a time for social entrepreneurship. This is a time where the world is very fragile. This is a time where a lot of communities, a lot of societies need a lot of support. So definitely, I think there's going to be tremendous scope for the concept of social entrepreneurship. Presentations we've gone over. In the UAE practice CSR by donating food packs for the Labour campaign. That's really, really nice, providing their hotel apartments. We've seen this in Malta as well. We've seen people donate some of their apartments, some guest houses, hotel. Lovely. What's this from Ethiopia? Local NGOs are victims of the pandemic. What do you say on this part? Local NGOs are victims of the pandemic. Well, to be quite honest, who isn't a victim? Is it only the NGOs that are victims? Can the NGOs raise some more financing from their donors? Then, of course, you have to see what the financial situation is for that NGO, whether they are working with volunteers or whether they are working with paid or part-timers, whether people are ready to do some work for the NGO part-time as well. It is a tough time, definitely. Yura from Mongolia, his role in helping entrepreneurs cope with their post-19 business operations. Well, we do teach entrepreneurship within our MSM program. So universities, ultimately, their direct role is to support in terms of education, to help people do things. You know, maybe an entrepreneur needs to develop a business plan. Maybe you need to raise some finance from a local bank to actually launch your business. Very difficult if you don't have a clue how to write a business plan. So of course universities do support in this respect, but very often through the academic arm that they might have. Of course, having said that, MSM has quite a vast array of networks, a vast array of capable faculty that can support quite a lot of different areas, whether it's finance, accounting, entrepreneurship, marketing. These are all areas that we definitely specialize in. Okay, Czech Republic, thank you, Africa. In Africa, SMEs are facing challenges of getting out, especially capital. Who isn't, as I said, you know, seed capital is very, very hard to come by at the moment. So you really have to try and make do with really, the minimum in that respect. It's not an easy time, obviously. thank you for the topic, inspirational talk. How is the SpaceX project you were part of? Oh, who said I was in the SpaceX project? If for any reason you told Brenda that I was part of SpaceX, no, I don't know where you got that from. It would be interesting to know where you heard that. I don't think I've got that written anywhere. Well, if there is any Dingli involved, it's not me. So I have to be honest there. Okay. But again, SpaceX is an incredible example of entrepreneurship, huh? Where you see failure, rockets blowing up, and yet there they go again and designing the next version to improve. Huh? Mutual cooperation has become even more important, which makes us more resistant. Definitely. Cooperation, working with others, international connections. Indeed, this pandemic, although that has created isolation in terms of face-to-face and physical encounters, has really created a sense of community. And I can say that even myself with my colleagues within Maastricht School of Management. Despite not living in the Netherlands, I am extremely close to my colleagues for these past 3 months, actually much more than I ever was before, where we would sort of take each other a little bit for granted. Today, we're all out to support, to share, to help, you know, and it's really nice in that respect. And I really hope that this is something that will last and is not just something that will survive until we get out of this mess that we are in. Okay, thank you again. Peru, 100 days of strict quarantine, all industries closed, a lot of business going out of business, and their governments will be strained dealing with healthcare. Policies government should enable to help entrepreneurs. Now, I've been to Peru, I've been to Lima, I've been around Peru quite a bit, been to Cusco, quite a few other places too. Lovely country. Ultimately, everything is going to depend on how fat your government's pockets are, what kind of finances your government actually has. I must say, from a local point of view, our government came up with quite some healthy support packages, despite not being available for everyone. So there's been a lot of support, even for people who were made redundant, or for people who could not go to work, for that matter. So everything is going to depend on the strength of your government, and that your government has the insight to realize the importance to support entrepreneurs right now, not in a year's time, right now. They are the ones that need financial support. And of course, there can be many ways in which they do that to ensure the money is not squandered and used for the right purpose. But if governments are not going to create packages, now it could be tax benefits, it could be free consulting services, it could be ensuring you might not need certain collateral to get certain loans. There are so many ways in which governments can support entrepreneurs. It does not always need to be a cash handout, for that matter. So there are so many ways in which governments can support. R&D support, you know, international networks, participating in international fairs, even if it is digital, for that matter. So there are so many things that governments can do, but ultimately there must be the political will to ensure that the economy moves forward. As much as you need to protect health, and I'm very sorry about the 100-day quarantine you are experiencing, must be tough. So health is, of course, always going to be number one, but of course, the economy and has to be considered as well. This is one of the toughest things all politicians are facing right now. How do you balance health with economy? Because if the economy goes down, people are going to suffer as well. And, you know, some people would rather take the risk to get COVID than to kind of die of starvation kind of thing. So this is a real dilemma, especially in some poorer parts of the world. And I'm sorry to tell you, as you well know, we can't really say that everybody in Peru is kind of capable of surviving this tough situation that they are in. Zimbabwe, mass profiteering with sanitizers, face mask, been told the prices. What did our government do? Our government set fixed prices for face masks and sanitizers. That's it. You cannot sell them more than a particular price. To ensure what you're talking about happened in Zimbabwe does not happen. Unfortunately, yes, there are a number of people in this world that will think of money before anything else in any circumstance. This requires government intervention, nothing else. This requires serious government intervention to sort this out. And you cannot have monopolies in these situations. Or even if there is a monopoly, there is a fixed, reasonable price that the population can afford. And if there need be, government finances that monopoly to ensure that a reduced price is possible. That's what government should be doing. Now, whether they do or don't, obviously, we don't know. Greater need for technology, definitely. Remote working, automation. Well, that's what we're going to see. Total transformation. Total transformation. Here we get the answer. Khalifa Fund supports nationals in the UAE, Belarus, Chechnya, and Egypt projects. So these are the ones that they support. So unfortunately, if you're not from one of those countries, I'm very sorry to say, you're going to have to look for another fund. But thank you for that insight, Musa, because it might help a number of people here. How can we help children with different ages to learn the basics with closure of schools? Well, we've got children in primary school back home, actually online doing Zoom sessions, obviously with support from parents for that matter. So there's a big strain on the family in this respect. So as much as we say people work from home, children learn from home, again, it depends on the home environment. Are we 6 people trying to use the same computer? Or are we a family that can afford 6 computers? Do we have a very powerful internet connection where 6 of us can be doing Zoom sessions all at the same time? Can we be in 6 different rooms, or are we 6 of us at the same table? So these are definitely tremendous challenges. And of course, here's where we will be seeing, where we do see poorer people obviously having a bit of a problem there in that respect. So that is a problem there. Uganda experiencing the effects with public transport, the most expensive means. Oh no. So again, you know, we are not seated doing that, okay, by many entrepreneurs compared to private. In Uganda, we're experiencing the effects with public transport turns out to be the most expensive means. Well, find a solution. Shared cars, shared vans, do something as long as it's allowed with the government regulations. Government will promote localization of business. Well, they will do it subtly in that respect. They're not going to go out publicly telling you, you know, don't set up something overseas, because of course international relations play an important political role. Some of us need to wake up, look at the opportunities. Mutual cooperation, we've said. In there, all your profits are spent on transport. That is very sad. So there requires, again, government intervention in that respect. How can we adapt and be entrepreneurs with the delay of salaries? Yes, salaries are an important thing because they have to keep the cash flow going. And we're not going to have money at all. It's going to be, of course, very, very difficult. Okay. At the same time, an entrepreneur is ready to take that risk. Eh? You know, just start that business and hopefully money starts coming in. Okay. So that is, of course, the big challenge we have over there. Focus on short programs, fast support for customers. Okay. Okay, Mark, great refresher. Still under lockdown, education, mid-May, no sign of opening schools. The question would be, are you using technology in the best way possible in Uganda? You know, obviously you depend on your technical infrastructure to do that. So needless to say, countries that were caught out without having solid technical infrastructures are no doubt suffering in that respect. So thank you all so much for your generous comments. I'm glad you joined us for today. Okay, thank you very much. Wendy, I'll leave it in your hands to close off the session. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you everybody for joining. I think it was a very inspirational talk. Thank you very much, David. And of course, we hope to welcome you again in another online masterclass. And the next one will take place next week, Tuesday, 30 June. And this will be a masterclass conducted by Aad van Maurik, Professor Aad van Maurik, and the topic is the COVID-19 crisis and the euro. So I'm sure you will receive the invitation this week. And for now, have a great day, have a great evening, and see you again very soon. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, David.
You're welcome, Wendy. Thank you for all.